So welcome everybody to this live feed of Fresh Produce India 2023. Welcome if you're joining us live, and also welcome if you're joining us, as many are, in catch-up of this 2023 event. My name is Chris White. I'm the Managing Director of FruitNet Media International, and I'm your host for this opening session of Fresh Produce India 2023. Now, we're again, through the miracle of the internet, appearing on screen again this year. We'd usually be in Mumbai for Fresh Produce India. The event has become the annual meeting point for India's fresh fruit and vegetable business over the past 15 years or so. And I know that we'd all be happier to meet in person in India today. But the good news is we're going to be back in person in 2024. So we'll be contacting you in due course to tell you about how we can all meet again live in India in the spring, in April 2024. For this year, as I've said, we're bringing you Fresh Produce India online. It's free to join wherever you are in the world, and it's a great way for you to find out about the many exciting developments in the fast-growing and the fast-moving market in India, to get yourself ready for our return in person in 2024. Now, today we're kicking off right here, right now, with this live panel discussion on the future of the fast-growing India market. And then over the next 2 days, today the 3rd, but also then on the 4th and the 5th of May, we're bringing you a series of expert talks and discussions on a range of important topics for India. These are broadcast each day on our website, freshproduceindia.com, and they're also delivered direct to you via our Fresh Produce India newsletter and broadcast on FruitNet Daily News. So to this opening session of this year's Fresh Produce India, India's future in focus. We're going to look at the big retail and consumer trends in India as we all emerge out of the pandemic. What are consumers in India looking for in fresh fruits and vegetables? How is e-commerce shaping the market, and how can fresh produce marketers best reach those consumers? We'll also explore how the supply chain is evolving in India. How are massive government-led investments in logistics infrastructure going to change the distribution landscape, and how can fresh produce marketers best reach those consumers? We're delighted to be joined by two leading industry experts who will come here on screen in a moment to discuss all of these issues. Saurabh Raina is the Assistant Vice President of Fresh at Reliance Retail, India's largest food retailer, and Kartik Jariman is Managing Director of Way Cool Foods, one of India's biggest and fastest growing ag commerce startups, which is building a direct supply chain between the farmer and retailer. Now, they should be both appearing on screen in a second, and I can welcome them formally. Kartik, there's Kartik. Hello, joining us from Chennai. Hello, good afternoon, Kartik, to you.
Good afternoon, Krish, and pleasure to join this panel.
Wonderful. And I know Saurabh is going to be joining us in a second too. Saurabh should be here with us in a moment through the miracles of technology, I hope. His internet connection is up and he's there. If not, he'll come with us in a second. He should be there with us. But anyway, let's start with the various discussions that we want to have. And I talked in those opening few remarks about the Well, about some of the changes we've seen through the pandemic, I want to focus less on the pandemic, but more on the kind of the big news that has been all over our newspapers and TV screens and so on in recent weeks, and that is that India is set to overtake, if not it has overtaken already, China as the world's most populous country, the world's largest consumer market, then in terms of numbers at least. And I think it's very interesting to note for any of you or any of us that have been to India, all of us that live in India, that we know that actually India is a remarkably young country. It's got a huge number of young consumers, and any Indian that I've ever met has always been, certainly the younger ones are certainly very conscious of consumption. They're young, upwardly mobile, aspiring consumers. Karthik, let me come to you first. How does this, do you think, how does these changing tastes, this changing consumer landscape, how does it affect the consumption of food more generally, but actually more specifically of fresh fruits and vegetables? What do you think?
Chris, I think there are a few dynamics at play over here. The first is obviously, yes, we are now, at least unofficially, the largest country in the world in terms of population. But what you touched upon, which is the number of young earning age consumers that are coming in, is also increasing at a much more rapid pace. And when the number of folks entering earning age improves, consumption overall experiences a substantial increase. The subtler shift that's happening is that parts of India are already moving from being an emerging economy to a middle income country. When one becomes a middle income country, then consumers start making more informed choices about basic products. Of course, they have discretionary spends, but some of that discretionary spend also gets converted into buying better quality products which they are buying for their essential use. And therefore consumers start becoming pickier about the quality of what they consume, and that is reflecting in in the markets as well. As what used to be treated as commodities are now being people are starting to look for brands in those commodities. If I were to borrow from an adjacent sector, if you look at staples, the rate at which staples are being branded is growing very, very rapidly, and new age companies are entering the space, as well as some of the big conglomerates are entering the space with branded staples, because the consumer is saying, I trust this brand and I think it will give me good quality. We expect similar trends to happen in the fresh produce space as well as the market continues to mature. So, in summary, it's not just the size, but the fact that the earning age population is increasing.
Oh, we lost Karthik there. I just your internet connection just lost there. But I think you were going to say about some of the implications of this emergence of a new consuming market in India. Saurabh, coming to you now. Joining us. Where are you, Saurabh, this morning? You're in Mumbai, aren't you?
Yes, very much in Mumbai.
Very nice to see you there, Saurabh. Thank you for joining us from Mumbai this morning, or this afternoon, I should say, because it's just gone 1:10 in Mumbai there. Excuse me, yeah, 1:10 or in India. When it comes to this this new population of consumers, what I got the impression from what Karthik was talking about just there was that we're looking at a population of consumers that is looking certainly at better quality. Are they focusing as intently on price as before?
So, in fact, thank you for having me over. I will just take on from what Karthik left and adding to what he just said about the consumer trends. So, pandemic gave us time to rethink about our priorities, health being one of them, and food has a direct connect with health. So, what we see is consumer understanding of safe food and awareness of nutrition and health increased significantly after the pandemic. Added to that, what we see in the consumer tastes are evolving, and consumer is becoming more experimental with the food, which augurs well for the industry. So what we see at our stores is two trends. One is premiumization of basic commodities, like from potato to low sugar potatoes, from regular bananas to MRL tested bananas, which are getting traction. The other being increased consumption of premium articles, um, say blueberries, avocados, super fruits. Yeah, so those are getting traction. Uh, we also see a very keen interest in traceability and organic grains. So these are the overall trends that we see in the fruits and vegetables sector, which are catching up and which is auguring well for supermarkets like us.
Now, Saurabh, this I imagine is really focused on can we call them the first tier, the top tier cities in India? So the city where you are, Mumbai, I imagine Delhi, Chennai, Calcutta. What about second tier cities around the country, of which there are many in India? Are you seeing these developments there too?
So Reliance is in omnichannel and equally present in large and tier 2, tier 3 cities. And with the awareness of Norway, with the awareness, with the campaigns that are happening around food safety, around healthy foods, we see a similar trend happening in tier 2, tier 3 cities. It's pretty universal that way.
And that spread of consumption habits, is it happening really quite quickly?
I won't say at a very fast pace, but there is definitely adoption, and this is the trend which is here for the next couple of years. It's in a way irreversible, with consumers having more power, money power, the income levels increasing, the youth very focused on health, and this trend is seen both in online and offline shopping. So it's pretty universal and here to stay.
I'd like to come to that point you make about online and offline shopping in a moment, but before we do, Saurabh, and I'll come to you in a moment too, Karthik. Saurabh, the issue of, how should I put it, of the way in which you as a retailer have to approach the market, with these changes happening so quickly, how do you keep pace with the changes? Because presumably you devise a strategy that soon enough has to change quite sharply as the market changes quite so quickly. Do I see that correctly?
That question is to me, Chris.
Yes, it is, Saurabh. Yes.
This is around technology. Sorry, your voice was like so.
It's about the changing consumer market in India. It sounds as though the changes are happening really quite quickly. You have to be therefore prepared for some quick changes as a retailer. And what demands does that put on you as a retailer?
Yes, so we need to be on top of our game. The benefit is that we are meeting our consumers every day, whether it's online or through retail. We keep getting constant feedback. So it could be payment solutions, it could be products, it could be on the merchandise we are carrying, or the new concept store. So yeah, here the consumers giving us live feedback 365 days of the year. So yes, it's as a retailer we find it very pleasing because it gives us chance to service customers exactly what they want.
But the interesting thing there is that one hears in markets all over the world that actually it's the consumer that's leading the retailer, and I always think to myself, I'm not so sure about that. I often think it's the retailer putting food in front of the consumer that affects their choices and affects the way in which the shopper behaves. But it sounds in India that the relationship is actually the shopper really wanting the retailers to supply food that they really want to have in they expect to see in their stores. And so in a way you're Is that fair to say? Chasing the shopper a bit more?
So the way so Reliance in the omnichannel space, right? So the way we look at our businesses, e-commerce is an interesting place to be, and it kind of gives a flip to our sales. So it empowers our customers. It helps compare pricing. E-commerce sees what the consumer can see what others are saying, and it's a great search place to be. But the way we are, and I hope I missed your question completely because your voice was echoing. But I would understand you're asking me on the physical space of growing the business. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. So what actually, so like I said, we have an omnichannel space, and what we see is while e-commerce is great at search and great at empowering the consumers, what it doesn't do on the flip side, and if I may quote Tamil Lal, who's the CEO of our company of Reliance Fresh, the grocery business, it takes away a social element out of the entire transaction. The social interaction, the shopping adds meaning to our consumers. That social interaction that is so important and worth it. So you would agree, Chris, that experiences of a life are multi-sensory, and customers want to feel and touch things, talk to people, be surprised, and that's where the physical, store or being in a physical space scores over in e-commerce. Having said that, I think there is room for everyone to grow.
Good. Thank you, Saurabh. Karthik, let me bring you back in. It's been mentioned by Saurabh and also by you about the growth of e-commerce. And it strikes me as being a very interesting thing that India should be such an emerging e-commerce environment, an e-commerce market. But it seems as though, I think I'm right in saying, that e-commerce hasn't really had a great deal of impact on fresh fruit and vegetable sales. Is that because retailers, the traditional retailers, the mom and pop stores that are out there have responded extremely quickly to the arrival of e-commerce? They've provided an immediate and very effective counterbalance, a competitive counterbalance to e-commerce. Is that correct?
I wouldn't entirely attribute it to that, Chris. I think firstly, it's very, very early days of e-commerce in India, and we know that these industries grow in cycles. They grow to a certain point, they discover better unit economics, then they sort of consolidate till they get to those unit economics, and then they grow again. So, to be honest, it's very, very early days of e-commerce. Having said that, more than the reactions from the traditional supply chains, I think it is discovery of unit economics, the trade-off of unit economics versus convenience and variety versus ability to touch and feel, that is still being played out in the markets. The consumer still likes to go out in the weekend, touch and feel the products, and enjoy the physical experience for bulk of their purchases. But for convenience, they rely upon e-commerce and potentially quick commerce to get, if you want onions in a hurry for today's cooking. That's when they go onto the e-commerce channels as of now. So if you look at traditional e-commerce, variety has been really the driver for people. I can get stuff on this platform that I can't get in my neighborhood store, has been the driver in other categories. That's yet to play out in India. And lastly, the unit economics for the last mile, the very last mile up to the doorstep, are yet to be demonstrated, and therefore companies are themselves, moving forward a little and then pulling back a bit. So I think this is still a process, very much a WIP, a work in progress, and it will take a few months. And as Mr. Raina was pointing out, this will settle somewhere in between. The consumer will be a mixed buyer themselves. They will go to the neighborhood store, they will go to the big supermarket, and they will order stuff on e-commerce. The same consumer will exhibit different behaviors. That's how we see this panning out.
And this is the maddening thing about consumers, isn't it? Is that they do all sorts of different things, and it's almost exceptionally difficult to predict what they're going to do next. Do I see it correct?
We ourselves are consumers. We should examine our own behaviors. This is how we behave. So that's how it's going to be. And ultimately, that's what matters, right? So
yes, of course. Now, the one thing that is very true about India is that India is an extremely digitally connected market. Most Indians these days walk around with a mobile phone. Many government services are available by mobile. India is connected in that way extremely in ways that are unimaginable in other parts of the world. Do you see, therefore, that in some ways the fact that India is so digitally connected that actually you might see the shift to e-commerce happening really very quickly?
actually, we're seeing a subtler effect, Chris, on this, which is that because of the extreme digital connectivity, I think Mr. Raina touched upon this as well. The aspiration levels are becoming uniform across the country. Consumers in remote locations want exactly the same products that the consumer in Mumbai want, and many of them can actually afford to pay for it because other expenses are lower, and the effective net income in smaller towns is actually not bad. And today, what we sense as happening in the next 5 years is that not that e-commerce takes off per se, but the aspiration takes off because of digital democracy and physical infrastructure catching up to be able to deliver that service or product to the remotest parts of the country. And I think you would have seen this. India is going through what was described as an eye-wateringly huge infrastructure upgrade, which is absolutely true. And when you visit us 5 years later, you will not recognize the physical infrastructure that's there on the ground, and that will enable aspiration, which has been created by the digital democratic trust with the physical availability of goods. And that's really the inflection point for e-commerce nationwide across the country. That's when logistics cost and unit economics will work out so well that you will see this big inflection in the country.
Saurabh, do you want to comment on that?
Yes, so I, in many ways, I agree with what Karthik says. So while digital infrastructure is always happening, we see that like we are growing stores, opening stores every month, and for us, digital is kind of overarching platform. It gives a flip to our sale. We are a firm believer that the Indian mainstream consumer loves shopping in the supermarket space. Stores that were 10 to 15 years back are also growing. So basically, we see the like-to-like store growth. So, and what we see is a well-known big store is a destination by itself, and it's going to be relevant for times to come, both in the small and towns and small and large towns. So, uh, as on today, like today, we are present in 100 townships, and e-commerce, digital, everything you said is only going to add to the store growth.
Karthik, back to you. You talked about this aspirational consumer. The complication I see is that the consumer may have a huge number of aspirations, and these consumers are all over the vast country that is India. That they're going to become disappointed consumers because essentially the supply chain can't keep up with the aspirations of consumers. Or do I see that the right way? Is that a problem that you fear?
I think, frankly, a lot of the consumers are folks who were disillusioned that they weren't getting what they aspired for, but are now starting to get it. As the infrastructure improves, our logistics costs are already starting to drop. Last year, it dropped by about 2 or 3 percentage points. We expect a 1 to 2 percentage point improvement in our logistics costs. And more importantly, we see logistics becoming feasible in routes that were not feasible. So what happens today is that I'm able to reach, premium apples into parts of the country where they don't get it as frequently. They probably get one shipment a week when a truck gets consolidated. But today I'm able to deliver it on demand because I'm able to ride off a cold chain that already exists rather than having to build it myself. We're starting to see those shifts. The aspirations existed even 4 or 5 years ago because the internet reached all these places 4 or 5 years ago. but the physical infrastructure is now catching up and therefore starting to fulfill that. And of course, the count may vary, the choices may vary, but the fact that we are being seen as a reliable, regular supplier into smaller towns is showing that there was a need, and that need was not being fulfilled, and folks like us are able to step in and fulfill that need now because the infrastructure permits us to do so today.
Now, you've talked about suppliers, and I'd like to come on to that area in a moment. But before I do, I'd just like to say to all our people who are online today live that you're very welcome to ask any questions. I see there's a lot of chat going on the chat area of the site. There's a Q&A panel as well. So if you do want to put your questions, please do, and I'll try and come to them. In fact, I have one here, which I'll take straight away, and perhaps I'll go to you, Saurabh, on this one. How do you see a quick commerce market for fresh produce in India? Asks Gino Joseph. A quick commerce market. What do you think about that, Saurabh?
So, like Karthik initially touched upon it, it's all in the evolution stage. Everything is work in progress. So for us, everything is around the physical retail, and then everything overarches around that. So yes, early days, there are certain green shoots showing, but it's still under, let's say, you have to give the time for it to nurture.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, let's come on to this question then of suppliers. And if you any suppliers out there that want to put their questions, please do in the Q&A panel. As I said, you're all welcome to put questions, of course, during this live Fresh Produce India 2023 opening session. If we can look at the market we've talked about, India's a vast country. It's a fragmented market in many ways that is losing its fragmentation. For suppliers who are approaching the Indian market, how can they get their messages across, and how can they interact with consumers? Do they need to deal with the Chennai market separately from the Mumbai market? Karthik, what are your recommendations for success there?
Because I think the markets are quite different, and even within each city or each region, you'll find micro markets that accept different kinds of products. So there is definitely a market, for example, that will look for premium blueberries and premium berries, even in a Chennai or in a Mumbai. It may be spread across 5 or 6 zip codes in Chennai, but maybe 30 or 40 zip codes in Mumbai, for example. And so pin codes in these geographies. So it varies at the micro market level. What will help is if suppliers partner with platform players such as Reliance or ourselves or any others who are present across geographies. We have demographic information on behavioral patterns, and we sort of have intelligence to figure out what product will move where. To give you an example, I think we've seen in apples, we had premium apples from certain countries, and we had value for money apples coming in from other countries. There is still a demand for both. It's just that we have to map supply with demand, and since we have data now and we have data science helping us, we're able to map that better and better. So if programmatic partnerships can be established with large organized supply chain operators, I think that will help suppliers in discovering these markets with lesser inaccuracy. Let me put it that way.
But
trade diffuses the product. Sorry.
Sorry to interrupt you, Karthik, but I wanted to ask you therefore, but what you've just said is really no different to any other consumer market in the world, is it? That you want to match supply with demand. Do I get the impression, or do I get the sense from you that it's perhaps slightly more complicated in India?
It is a lot more complicated in India, Chris, because India is not a monolithic market. You can't measure us based on per capita income. There are extremely developed parts of India, even the Indian consumer, even within a place which has the most backward per capita income. And you'll find vice versa as well. So, for example, we use 225 layers of data to figure out buying behaviors of different consumers and match products to those consumers. And literally every pin code buys differently in the cities that we operate in. And that's the level of precision that's required when it comes to merchandising the right product to all of these customers as well. And that's been that it's non-trivial. One would imagine that if you go to a smaller town, the demand for, say, premium Washington apple will be lower. That's not true. The small town will have better disposable income, and they will have folks who actually want this product, but they're not able to get that product. So that data today, with data science, it's possible to tease some of these out, and there's enough physical data available for us to work on as well, and that's what makes life easier.
Saurabh, to you on the question of, we raised it a moment ago during this discussion about price and the sensitivity that the market has to price. My understanding is that India has something of a reputation as a more price-sensitive market, particularly when it comes to imported foods and produce. Do you think it'll ever become a premium paying market, one that can return sustainable price premiums for high-quality brands? That happens in China, for example. Will it happen, do you think, in India?
So India is India, and it's best we don't compare it to China, Taiwan, Vietnam, these premium markets. India will grow at its own steady pace, and premiumization is actually already happening. Like Karthik said, we don't just. So I'll just throw some numbers. We are saying per capita GDP is of India is around $2,000. So China is around $12,000. So nowhere India can be compared to China. But having said that, it is believed that 10% of India's population holds 77% of India's wealth. Now, that 10% of 1.4 billion people is a lot in absolute numbers by itself. Yes, so the market is there. We need to study the Indian consumers. We need to service them well, and we can already see signs. I mean, the way the blueberry market is growing in India, the avocado market. I mean, these are 1,000 to 1,500 rupees a kilo. They are high, and yet it's growing, even though at a lower price. We see increasing amount of apples, premium apples coming into India. So it's happening. It's happening at its own pace. Uh, Look at Zespri, right? We spoke to the Zespri guys a few weeks back. They were saying India is no longer the bottom written markets. It's become somewhere in the middle. So yes, so that premiumization is there. Like Karthik said, the pockets are there everywhere in India, and it's not one India. It's many Indias in one. So we need to find our customers. We need to pamper them. We need to service them well, and that's the way to go.
Okay, let's turn to the question of infrastructure. You've both mentioned it, and you, Karthik, gave a very positive idea of the way infrastructure is developing in India. And we have a question here from a gentleman from Star Agro Exports who says, can you share more about the infrastructure part on cold storage you just shared about? What is the shift you are referring to here in cold storage, which was not there 4 or 5 years ago? What do you have to say to that, Karthik?
I think, Chris, we are now able to get solutions rather than just cold storages. 4 to 5 years ago, I was able to rent a cold storage, which is a pretty good, cold storage, and I was working with an independent logistics player who would move the material between the cold storages, and I would handle my own trucks in the last mile, and the solution had to be engineered by me. Today, I have players talking to me about creating a network for me and saying that as long as you feed it in one end of the network, we'll make sure it reaches the other end of the network, and that helps. We still don't have it as a pan-India solution, but there are strong routes where players are able to offer us end-to-end solutions, and that takes one job off our plates, and it just makes it that much easier. And I think a lot of capacity has been added, and folks are figuring out ways to monetize this capacity, so they're becoming very, very proactive about offering such solutions. That's the shift that we see. The last shift that we see, which is still a work in progress, is the velocity of transport, between the port and the storage and beyond. I think the integrated logistics program that India has launched called Gati Shakti makes sure that intermodal logistics efficiency improves, and the expressway programs that are coming out truly increases the average velocity of movements. Otherwise, we found that even though we had national highways, the velocity of the trucks was an average of 50 kilometers an hour. Now, with the expressways coming in with relatively better access control, we anticipate that this velocity will increase to 70 to 80 kilometers per hour. And that will help us truly move sensitive and perishable goods to deeper parts of the country over and above the cold storages that already exist.
Of course, and one of the things that all of you who live in India and all of us that visit India won't forget about India is the traffic. Certainly in your larger urban centres, you're seeing literally that problem being tackled so quickly. Do you, Karthik?
We are seeing. I mean, I'm basing this based on evidence on our own data, where we are seeing improvement in average velocities, not to the extent of 80 kilometers per hour, but at least it's 5 to 10 kilometer per hour average speed increase. We're seeing reduction in logistics cost by 2 to 3 percentage points. So this is evidence based, and we have a sense of the programs that are coming live. I mean, we probably inaugurate one new expressway every month and a new airport every 2 weeks nowadays. So we're clearly seeing a lot of this capacity coming on stream.
And that makes a practical difference in terms of distribution across the country, or do you think it's helping, as it were, localize distribution networks as well?
Today, it is still across the country. For example, from moving material from Mumbai to Nagpur would have taken over a day, and today it's possible to do it in about half a day. That's the material difference.
And how far is from Mumbai to Nagpur for those?
About 1100 to 1200 kilometers, right? So that's a material difference, and that makes newer linkages possible, and material can reach deeper into the country. Most of the focus for the next 5 to 10 years we anticipate will be here, and then we will talk about the last mile urban infrastructure renewal, which will start kicking in maybe 5 to 10 years down.
So there's a lot happening in India currently. Just to give us an understanding, to get from Mumbai to Nagpur, let's say 5-10 years ago, would it have taken you a lot longer than just that one day, wouldn't it?
Closer to it, yeah. I guess I mean before that, it's before my time, so I can't comment on it. But 24 hours used to be the time it took at a minimum to move goods over that distance, and this is because it's intrastate. If you're crossing state borders, there were even greater delays because the border checks will take time and so on. Yes. Today, it's possible to do that in half the time.
Yeah. Saurabh, to you, the importance of efficiency in logistics and logistics that work is crucial for a nationally based chain as you are.
Yes, certainly, and we handle the entire logistics internally. We have our own company which runs that. And like Karthik said, we are seeing efficiency in the tolls being removed with better roads and all that in place. Our speed of delivery, our turnaround times are faster. And it's critical for a retailer. It helps in better fill rates. It helps in reaching the goods faster. It helps in better fill rates. It helps in optimizing our costs. Our turnaround times are better. And with more, so we handle both ambient and the cold logistics, the cold chain part of it, and the savings are in the decent numbers. And we see more than that. We see with the kind of expansion that is happening within our stores. We're opening 20-30 new stores every month, which is adding pressure to our supply chain. The improvement in infrastructure has been a blessing.
We've got another question from Gino Joseph. As often happens, there's somebody who always wants to know an awful lot, and Gino is today's person with lots of questions. He asks, how do you define premium apples, based on variety or from the countries they're sourced from? Saurabh.
So, short answer, we define premiumness as per affordability. So that will be the first one. Then comes the varieties. So you have basic articles like in Gala, Red Delicious, Fuji, Granny. These are basic articles, and the premium ones in Gala itself, you will have a premiumization, which is New Zealand. So there comes the origin, which is a more premium apple, say, than a Holland apple or a Brazil apple, because both of them southern hemisphere. So definitely New Zealand is more premium than Fiji, and not only just because of the price point, because it's a better eating apple, better eating fruit. It's got better legs. It carries well, and the customers are willing to pay. Most importantly, that extra dollar more, or extra 10 rupees more per kg to buy the New Zealand fruit over the Brazilian. So yes, one is the price points are important, other origins are important, and then you've got the club varieties like the pink ladies, the Inno Reds, the NVHs, which are truly a premium in all sense, not only in the Indian market but in the international market as well.
Now, of course, I know it's an important time for selling apples in India, but it's also the major part of the time of the year when you guys start eating mangoes in large volume, and the season really picks up. And you eat a lot of domestically grown fruits and vegetables. Just the last part of our discussion today, the growth of the domestic market, of the domestic production of fruits and vegetables. We talk about the import side. I'd also like to talk a little bit more, if we could, in the last few moments, about the domestic growth of Indian-grown fruits and vegetables. Karthik, do you see this becoming a really defining characteristic of the market in India in the next 5 to 10 years, the improvement of domestically grown fruits and vegetables, and the appetite among Indian consumers to eat them in even more quantities than before?
Yes, Chris, I think this is inevitable because one is it's more remunerative for the farmers, and farmers are always looking at improving the effective remuneration per acre. So that's the first driver, and the second is the desire to find to get products that are typically imported at great cost, cultivated locally, is also very high amongst the stakeholders. So we're already seeing, for example, dragon fruit being grown locally. A lot of the fruit that were grown in Thailand are easily growable in India. And now we're starting to see the growth of berries and other products in the market itself. This, of course, there's a subtler factor over here that food miles also reduce, so your logistics costs come down, and obviously your emissions come down, etc. But yes, we do see this trend happening of higher and higher value products being grown locally, and the quality of domestic produce also continually improving so that it is equivalent to global products.
And last question to you, Saurabh. An Indian consumer is no different to a consumer anywhere in the world. They remain fiercely proud of something that's grown locally by their own farmers. This is driving the demand for locally grown in India too, is it?
Yes, in fact, what Karthik is saying, India, in fact, a lot of companies are investing into India, into the agriculture space, and that indeed is great news and opportunity because as these companies come in, to bring with them the best practices, better genetics, technology, and everything. And there is a preference towards Indian fruit, not only because it's cheaper, but because India is going to pay something which they had to import earlier. So it augurs well for the market because the adoption is much more. Say blueberries growing in India and avocados growing in India is only going to set the base right for more imports coming into India because the base is going to increase. Having said that, there are challenges as well, IP being one of them. And obviously, we need to develop the Indian market so that they give a good return to the grower. So these are early days, so to say, and time will tell us which all products will make an dent and which one we cannot get weeded out.
Well, these are all questions that we love talking about at Fresh Produce India, and we're looking forward very much to talking about live and in person at Fresh Produce India in 2024. But for today, I'd like to thank you both, Saurabh Raina and Karthik Jariman, for joining us from Mumbai and Chennai, respectively, on this opening session of Fresh Produce India. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. So that brings us close to the end of this opening session to Fresh Produce India 2023. But we have more great content coming up for you over the next 2 days. Tomorrow, the 4th of May, we'll hear from Tarun Arora, who's the director of IG International, one of India's biggest fruit and vegetable companies. And Tarun is going to telling us why this leading importer is branching into the domestic production of fruit in such a big way. We've just spoken a little about it there at the end of our opening session. Avocados on the rise in India, and we'll also be talking to the heads of major multinational supplier Westphalia about their own entry into the market in India with a brand new joint venture. And then on Friday, the 5th of May, we kick off with a focus on India's table grape industry. Azhar Tambuwala of Sahyadri Farms explains how the industry is gaining fresh impetus with the arrival of new varieties from international breeding programs. And we finish this year's Fresh Produce India on Friday with a look at the citrus import market in India. We'll hear from David Daniels of Citrus Australia, who'll be talking to us about his industry's recent initiative to develop the India market with premium citrus from Australia. So that's all coming up. These episodes are broadcast on the Fresh Produce India website, freshproduceindia.com, and delivered to you daily via our Fresh Produce India newsletter. So keep a lookout for those. They provide you with some great insights to what's happening in the high growth India market. And they get you ready for Fresh Produce India and its return in person in India in 2024. This is Chris White. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, and enjoy the rest of Fresh Produce India 2023.
For us, it's very important to be present here, to create connection, to be together with our customers, speaking as well and connecting with the consumers in this important area.
亚洲水果展的话，对我们来说一直是以来是一个非常好的一个平台。 在这个平台上面，我们可以见识，就每年都可以见到很多老朋友，我们过去来更新一下我们互相的状态，也有很多新朋友来发掘一些新的产品啊。
This country is citrus country, and it has been for over 200 years. Since the 18th century, Australia has been producing the world's best tasting, juiciest, premium quality citrus. Today, around 1,400 growers across the country provide our fruit, your fruit. We're experienced growers, packers and exporters, and this is only part of the equation. Our industry invests time in understanding our individual markets, the nuances, consumer preferences. Our offering is tailored to your preferred variety, taste profile and fruit size, while adhering to your import safety requirements, and most importantly, delivering a flavour that exceeds your customers' expectations. Because flavour and quality is key in all that we do. All that beautiful sunshine, clean air and water has found a home in Australian citrus. Our growers take great pride in growing such outstanding fruit for you.
Driven by leadership, dedicated to delivering innovation and quality, Sinclair brings efficiency and functional label solutions to your operations. Sinclair technology ensures retailers have efficient operations and helps consumers make informed choices. With manufacturing locations globally and local technical service teams providing support, Sinclair all-inclusive labeling agreements ensure peace of mind. We install high-speed tray, online, and variable print labeling solutions for small operations all the way up to state-of-the-art packing houses. We're here to support you, providing innovation, sustainable label solutions, and great customer service. A partnership built around you.
Hi, my name is Laura Martin, and I'm in charge of subscriptions at FruitNet. I want to tell you about FruitNet's new digital magazines. They are free to download, and they offer a range of news, interviews, and industry analysis. You can access them online to read them live, or download them to read them later. They work on your smartphone, your tablet, and your computer. If you subscribe already, just go to the App Store, Google Play, or desktop to download the app. If you want to become a subscriber, please get in touch. Email me on subscriptions@fruitnet.com. In the meantime, this is a short video that explains how the app works. It's really easy. So give it a try and happy reading!
Asiafruit has recently launched its new digital magazine. You can now read your favourite fresh produce business magazine and catch up on the latest news via your smartphone or tablet device. The new app allows you to share stories within your network and has a handy search function to filter news you're looking for. You can also download new and previous editions of Asiafruit to read them offline. All Asiafruit subscribers have access to the new Asiafruit app, and if you do not have a subscription, contact our team today to organise one. The new user-friendly digital edition has been created by the same people behind apps developed for The Economist, The Independent, and other leading publications. So don't wait any longer. Asiafruit app is now available to download free from the App Store and Google Play.